On this vote, the yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted. This is the vote tally card. We're going to frame this one, okay? 218, 214.
There have to be consequences to these votes, and we have to decide if this is just a joke or just for TV or if this is our real lives. And I hope people vote like it's our real lives.
They're going to be destitute, and they're not going to be able to have their Medicaid. They're also not going to be able to have some of the benefits that the Affordable Care Act was able to bring to their families.
But it's a good bill overall in terms of what it does on tax policy, spending, historic mandatory reductions, and importantly, the Green New Scam subsidy repeals that I think now the executive branch can make sure happen.
I think this is one of the saddest days in modern American history. This is the largest withdrawal and ending of health care in American history. 17 million Americans in our country are going to lose their Medicaid.
Congress just passed the most divisive legislation in decades, and both parties are lying to you about what's actually in it. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act passed by a combined 5 votes across both chambers, the thinnest margin for any major legislation in modern history. Republicans call it the largest tax cut in history. Democrats call it a healthcare apocalypse. The truth? Both are right, both are wrong, and the real story is what neither side wants you to understand. Here's what actually happened. Congress fundamentally rewired the American economy with 870 pages that almost nobody read. The Independent Congressional Budget Office ran the numbers. Multiple think tanks across the political spectrum analyzed the impacts, and their conclusions should worry everyone, regardless of party. Let's start with facts, not spin. The legislation makes Trump's 2017 tax cuts permanent, preventing their scheduled expiration on December 31st, 2025. That's $3.7 trillion in tax relief over 10 years. It also cuts federal spending by $1.3 trillion, primarily through Medicaid reductions and work requirements. The net result adds $3 to $4.1 trillion to the national debt. Republicans are right that without this bill, taxes would have increased on nearly every American. The standard deduction would have been cut in half. Child tax credits would have shrunk. Middle-class families would have faced real tax increases. These are verifiable facts from tax law, not propaganda. Democrats are right that 11.8 million Americans will lose health insurance, according to CBO projections. Medicaid faces $863 billion in cuts. Food assistance drops by $295 billion. These aren't scare tactics, they're budget mathematics. But here's what both sides won't tell you. The growth projections don't add up, and everyone in Washington knows it. The Penn-Wharton budget model, run by a former Bush Treasury official, found something remarkable. The bill's deficit impact is actually higher when you account for economic growth than when you don't. That's almost unprecedented. It means the economic damage from cutting benefits outweighs the growth from cutting taxes. Republicans claim the tax cuts will supercharge growth and pay for themselves. The actual projection from the Conservative Tax Foundation, growth offsets only 22% of the revenue loss. That's not even close to paying for itself. Democrats claim the bill will crash the economy immediately. The actual projection? GDP grows by 0.5 to 1.2% over the decade. That's positive, just nowhere near enough to justify the debt. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, which both parties cite when convenient, calls it fiscally irresponsible and projects debt reaching 124 to 134% of GDP. For context, Greece's debt crisis began at 130%. The distributional analysis tells a complex story that neither party wants to acknowledge fully. A family making $75,000 saves about $1,300 annually in taxes. That's real money. Republicans highlighting this aren't lying. The top 10% of earners get an average of $12,000 annually. The bottom 10% lose $1,600. Both parties engage in selective truth-telling here. Republicans focus on the tax cuts helping everyone. Democrats focus on the benefit cuts hurting the poor. Both are true, neither tells the complete story. Here's what's actually happening. Congress chose to prevent a tax increase by creating a healthcare decrease. Whether that trade-off is worth it depends on your circumstances, not your politics. Republicans say the bill ends wasteful green energy subsidies. Democrats say it destroys American clean energy leadership. The reality is more nuanced and, frankly, more concerning than either narrative. The bill eliminates $500 billion in clean energy tax credits. These credits have created approximately 300,000 manufacturing jobs in red states like Georgia and Texas. Those jobs are now at risk. That's not partisan spin, it's factory payrolls. But Republicans have a point too. Many of these credits went to wealthy Americans, buying Teslas and installing solar panels. The bottom 50% of earners received almost none of these benefits. Subsidizing luxury purchases with taxpayer money is a legitimate concern. The problem? We're pulling the plug just as American companies started competing with China in these industries. The factories being built won't disappear, they'll just be built in China instead. Both parties are avoiding this uncomfortable truth. September 30th, 2025, electric vehicle tax credits end. If you're planning to buy an EV, this date matters regardless of your politics. December 31st, 2025, residential clean energy credits expire. Solar installers are already warning of layoffs. January 1st, 2026, enhanced ACA subsidies disappear. 8 million Americans will see premium increases averaging $200 monthly. That's not a projection, it's arithmetic. December 2026, Medicaid work requirements fully phase in. States must build new bureaucracies to track compliance. Red states and blue states both face this challenge. The cascade effect is where propaganda meets reality. When millions lose health coverage, emergency rooms see more uninsured patients. Hospitals eat those costs. They pass them to insurance companies. Premiums rise for everyone. The math here doesn't care about ideology. It's how healthcare economics works. Here's what's fascinating. Republican governors who supported the bill are privately panicking. Democratic governors who opposed it are secretly relieved they have someone to blame for coming tax increases. The federal government cut Medicaid by $863 billion, but gave states only $50 billion for rural hospitals. Every governor, red or blue, can do that math. States must either raise taxes or cut services. There's no third option. Texas faces $40 billion in new costs, California faces $60 billion, Florida $35 billion. These aren't partisan talking points, they're state budget offices running numbers. The Republican governor of Ohio warned lawmakers this will, quote, blow a hole in our budget. The Democratic governor of Michigan said the same thing. When both parties agree behind closed doors, pay attention. The National Association of Manufacturers publicly praised the bill, but their members are quietly modeling recession scenarios. Why the disconnect? Large corporations benefit massively from the tax cuts. The permanent 21% corporate rate and immediate expensing provisions save them billions. Their public support is genuine. But these same companies need healthy workers and stable communities. When employees lose healthcare, productivity drops. When consumers lose food assistance, spending falls. When states raise taxes to cover Medicaid, business costs increase. Short-term gains versus long-term stability. The tax cuts are immediate. The problems compound over time. After the bill passed, the dollar dropped 2.3%. Treasury yields rose 47 basis points. Credit default swaps on U.S. debt doubled. These aren't partisan indicators, they're market prices. China immediately marketed their bonds as, quote, more stable than U.S. treasuries. That's propaganda, but effective propaganda because it contains truth. When your debt to GDP approaches 130%, creditors get nervous. The International Monetary Fund, hardly a left-wing organization, warned that U.S. fiscal policy is, quote, unsustainable. When the IMF starts sounding like deficit hawks, the situation is serious. Here's what every credible analyst agrees on, whether they're conservative or liberal. The math doesn't work long-term. You cannot cut taxes by $3.7 trillion, cut spending by $1.3 trillion, and expect economic growth to make up the difference. It has never worked. It will not work now. By 2034, interest payments on the national debt will reach $1.8 trillion annually. That's more than the entire Pentagon budget. Every dollar spent on interest is a dollar not spent on anything else. Not defense, not healthcare, not infrastructure, nothing. This creates what economists call a doom loop. Higher debt means higher interest. Higher interest means less spending on growth. Less growth means less revenue. Less revenue means higher debt. The cycle continues until something breaks. Republicans say this bill saves the middle class from a massive tax increase. That's true. Democrats say this bill strips healthcare from millions to pay for tax cuts for the rich. That's also true. Both can be true, because Congress faced a genuine choice. Let taxes rise or cut spending. They chose to cut spending. Whether that's good or bad depends on whether you're getting a tax cut or losing healthcare. The real question neither party wants to address: was there a third option? Could Congress have extended middle-class tax cuts while letting upper-income cuts expire? Could they have cut spending without touching healthcare? Those debates never happened because both parties preferred partisan warfare to problem-solving. If you're in the top 20% of earners, you'll likely come out ahead. Your tax cuts exceed any benefit losses. That's math, not ideology. If you're in the bottom 40%, you'll likely come out behind. Your benefit losses exceed your tax cuts. That's also math, not ideology. If you're in the middle, it depends entirely on your specific situation. Do you have employer health insurance? You're probably fine. Do you rely on ACA subsidies? You're in trouble. Own a small business? The tax cuts help. Work in clean energy? Start job hunting. The worst part? Both parties know this. They're just betting their base cares more about winning than math. Congress just made a $4 trillion bet that economic growth will somehow overcome fiscal gravity. Every independent analysis says they're wrong. Not Republican analyses, not Democratic analyses, independent analyses. The one big beautiful bill isn't beautiful or ugly. It's math. And math doesn't care about your politics, your party, or your propaganda. It just adds up. Or in this case, doesn't. In 18 months, every House member faces re-election. They'll all claim victory or predict disaster based on their party. But reality will have started setting in. Hospitals will be closing, premiums will be rising, debt will be mounting. And voters will have to decide, was the trade-off worth it? That's not a partisan question. It's the only question that matters, and only you can answer it.